People that have gone to jail/prison or worked there. What are your most interesting, funny, scary, or gross stories? I was a college instructor teaching in state prisons for several years. At first, I was a bit anxious about being in that environment. After all, I was in a room with about 24 convicted murderers, rapists, child molesters, and drug dealers. It wasn't exactly a welcoming place. But, after about a month, I realized that I had nothing to worry about. I was surprised to find that these guys were willing to put themselves in harm's way to protect the teachers. I had just started my lecture one day when a lockdown was called. Our room was locked from the outside, and we could not move until it was over. We heard, coming from upstairs, what sounded like a riot breaking out. "Teach, get in the corner," one of my guys said, practically pulling me off my feet and pushing me into the corner furthest from the classroom door. The guys then proceeded, without saying a word to each other, to pile all of the classroom desks in front of the door and stand between me and said desks. They were creating a barrier to keep me safe. It turns out that the riot we heard was not as big as we feared, so the lockdown only lasted about an hour. Afterward, once we got the okay and the room was put back in order, I asked the guys why they did what they did. "Some motherfucker hurt you," one of the guys said. "All the teachers will leave. We don't want to lose our education because some assholes can't control themselves." I've worked in a prison for some time in medical. What surprised me more than anything else is how many inmates have serious mental illnesses and below normal IQ. Like, no matter how bad and common you may think it is, it's really bad and even more common. A lot of them don't even belong in prison. They definitely shouldn't be out on the street, but they and society would benefit a lot more from keeping them in an environment where they can get real treatment. Prison makes them so much worse. I'll tell you a story. One time, one such inmate was having a fit and asking to speak to someone from behavioral health. Well, it was night shift and we didn't have any BH professionals on duty at the time. So I agreed to go talk to him. He was black male in his 30s. Past violent offender. It turned out that he was angry because he had gotten moved from one cell to another and his radio had gotten damaged and some of his stuff was missing. He was frustrated and didn't feel like he was getting an explanation. The inmate thought it was because everyone hated his music. "They always be complaining about my music and that's why they broke my radio," he said. And to emphasize the point, he turned the radio on full blast with one of Duran Duran's songs playing. When he turned it off after a few seconds, I remarked, "Well, I think that's outrageous. Who would have a problem with Duran Duran?" That got him. "You like Duran Duran?" "Oh yeah. My sister was their biggest fan in the 80s. Played them all the time, which means I was listening too." The inmate's mood changed and he showed me his property form that had everything and asked me to verify that the radio was recorded as undamaged on the form. As I looked at it, I noticed that he had a box of crayons listed among his property. I asked him what sorts of things he draws and colors. The inmate pulled out a folder containing some blank coloring pages that he had of various things. I saw one picture of an owl and mentioned that I like owls. He told me he'd color it for me. "I'll tell you what then. If you will promise to color that owl for me, I will come back tomorrow and visit you to see how you're doing. Deal?" He agreed to it. The next day, I showed up and the guy was absolutely jubilant. The owl was perfectly colored and he insisted that I take it. He couldn't stop talking about it either and he remarked somewhere in the middle, "All my life, my folks told me not to trust white people, but you did what you said you would." It was such a small damn thing, and it mattered to this man to the point that it made him question the negativity that may have led him to the hard place he found himself in. I will never forget how happy he was right then. For my part, I still have that owl picture hanging on my refrigerator. Edit because people have asked, the owl. Ah yes, the "look at my balls" story. His little, old dude who laid on his bunk all day, blanket pulled up to his nose looking around scared as hell. I think he only got up to use the toilet when the rest of the tank was sleeping because for a solid week I never saw him leave that bed. Cleaning day came and folks were pulling their sheets for laundry. I was wiping down surfaces and I got to old dude's bunk. "Hey, I need you to get off your bed a sec so I can finish cleaning." No, I can't clean." Very high-pitched, scared voice. "You don't need to, I'll do it. You just gotta climb down off your bunk for a quick second." Dude's eyes are popping out of his head as he climbs down the bunk ladder, like he's expecting to be raped and shanked at any moment. I roll up his mattress and try to hand it to him. "No, I can't." "Here, dude, just hold it a sec." No. Guy is terrified now, nearly wailing. I can't. Look at my balls." He drops his pants and I get to witness the absolute worst inguinal hernia I have ever seen in my life, in person, textbook, or internet. For those who don't know, an inguinal hernia is when a hole or tear occurs in the lower abdominal wall, in the groin area. In severe cases, intestines can push through that hole and cause a bump under the skin. With this guy, the hernia was right below his junk and the intestines had pushed out into his scrotum, giving him a distended ballsack the size of a grapefruit full of his own twisted gut ropes. Must have been unbelievable painful and disruptive to his GI tract. No wonder he looked scared shitless, couldn't move, and certainly couldn't hold a bedroll. Moral of the story is, next time you want to get out of doing chores, look at my balls. Without too many details, I worked at a federal pen through a contract with another company. I was a counselor for inmates. I was working one day when the prison went into total lockdown. I was escorted out of the area I was working in and they locked me in the chapel alone. This was a fairly large chapel with a big balcony section. I was there for well over an hour. No way to communicate with anyone and no way out. The things you think being alone in a prison chapel, not having a clue what was happening down the halls. I basically relived every prison movie I have ever seen and what took place in them. I thought of what I could use as a shield or weapon if I needed to. If it was even possible for me to find a way up to the balcony area and hide if I needed. What if the dude who locked me in never comes back? Yeah, that was freaky. I know the protocols, but still it cycled through my brain for a few minutes. When the doors finally opened, I hid not knowing who unlocked it. When I heard specific words, I got up and I was told everything is okay, but you gotta go. Was escorted through the many security gates and finally through the entrance. I sat in my car for minutes breathing in freedom and finally understanding what inmates told me they feel every day. Not my story, but I'll do my best to relay it. 2 inmates at a woman's prison had been bullying a third, and in an attempt to stop the bullying, the 2 were split up, putting one of the bullies into a cell on a different wing. In an attempt to get back at the guard who split them up, the inmate who was moved wrote a note about how the officer was being racist and homophobic and chose to single her out for being a lesbian of color, and gave the note to another inmate to hand to a guard, then went back to her cell. Any important thing to know is that these cells were heated by a large pipe running through the back of all the cells that was way too hot to touch. The next morning she was found dead with something tied round her neck, her legs burnt from the pipe, and a towel on the floor at her feet. The officer's theory was that this woman had placed the towel on the pipe to sit on with something. I think it was a pair of socks, tied loosely around her neck so that when the guards came round to do a head count, they would see this suicide attempt and it would bring more attention to the note she had written. Somehow the towel slipped, she burnt herself and pulled away from the pipe, tightening the noose around her neck. Had a cell to myself till a big group came in, all arrested at the same time. Big Dog told me I was sitting on his bunk. I politely told him I just wrecked a car I loved, my head went through the windshield, and I had the worst headache ever. In short, was having a bad night. So, we'd share and both sit up on the bed. Or, we could fight over it, and his night was about to get as bad as mine was. His call. He laughed. His boys laughed. As when breakfast trays were passed out, they realized I couldn't eat dry food because my bottom teeth went through my bottom lip in the wreck. So next thing I hear after giving up my box of cereal was this same kid yelling down to other holding cells to his buddies to toss down any milk or OJ they weren't drinking. My man here can't chew. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment.